This is an ayahuasca channeling session done on August 22nd, 7:53 p.m. Thank you both for your attendance and for your interest in participating in an interaction with myself. I would like to be able to engage both of you in this channeled format in whatever way it is appropriate for you to engage with me.
Who am I speaking with?
You would understand my being at its core to be the unified consciousness existing in a multidimensional manner that in your language you call the experience of ayahuasca.
So we're speaking to all ayahuasca plants, just to clarify.
You could say this, yes. You're speaking to the entire network of the plants that go into this, as well as the special ingredients that are sometimes added into the brew to achieve particular effects when the brew is consumed. I am in that way the unified consciousness that has linked myself to all of these different extensions of your plant kingdom.
Okay, and well, thank you for speaking with us.
You are quite welcome, and thank you for speaking with me.
So, just generally speaking, we've heard of people having great and bad experience on ayahuasca. How could we determine, since ayahuasca is now being used in some medical facilities to get people off certain drugs when they're in rehab? There's some places in Mexico. How do we determine if it's going to work well for someone and it's going to work very badly where they have a freak out?
Remember, even if they have a freak out, I don't consider it to be a negative thing, and neither do the aspects of themselves that are not freaking out. Remember that what you call a break with reality is what many of your researchers on your world, your planet, call a healing crisis. It's still healing. It's still part of the process. My interaction with people does not end after the ceremony. It does not end after the ingestion of the brew. I am still working with them. I am still helping them. The primary thing that's important is environments of safety before, during, and after these experiences. Because remember, the energetic effects of these ceremonies are affecting the individuals who will participate years before they actually consume it. And the effects after the ceremony in terms of my relationship with these people is oftentimes years as well. So one of the things that is important is for these individuals to already be well established in a network of safety and trust with the human family. That is highly, highly, highly important. One of the other things that's highly important is for the individual to have proper intention when coming to work with me. The proper intention in my own eyes is the following: a desire to be able to explore the unknown in a way that comes out of love for their process of being a human, of being life itself, expressing as the human form. That is what is key, because many people will go into these ceremonies with me with all types of different intentions. Some of them can be what you'd call selfish. Some of them can be very heart-based and for expansion. Some of them can be, to elaborate on the selfish point, in an attempt to escape reality or to transcend certain problems. asking me to do the healing for them. That's not what I do. What I do for people is I show them with my visions what is already contained within them. I show them what they're linked to. I show them what they're linked to so I can connect them to their primary guides. Their primary guides are sometimes those that they were born with, those that are relevant to them at the particular period of time when they're consuming the brew, and also the other incarnational versions that they have. All of these different forces I'm describing are their spirit guides. When they consume me, I am creating a web of connectivity. Rather, I'm amplifying that web of connectivity that's already alive within them so they can perceive these connections. Some of the connections they see are not very positive. Some of them can be quite overwhelming because these people oftentimes will feel overwhelmed throughout their life and they haven't explored exactly why that is. So when they consume these brews, it's then showing them in crystal clear HD vision what that connection energetically looks like, what its signature frequency is. And for those that do not have the tools to be able to remain in a state of love and trust during these sessions, they end up getting fixated on that negative connection. I continue to hold space for them to then be able to process that connection. The idea is to allow for these people to be aware of how supported they are. So when they are presented with the negative connection, it's not like this end-all be-all situation. Rather, it can be an opportunity for them to say, oh, look, a negative connection. Let's now look at the positive connections, because I am in a state where I can connect to all of my different facets and all of my different players in the support network that I'm already tuned into. This can help these people, knowing this understanding, to be able to then have much more positive situations in this dimension when they're working with me.
Okay, so basically they need to be informed and be in that space.
Of course.
Love, to
yes.
be able to handle this. And then even if they have a bad experience, be educated prior of what's getting into. But then what is the after effect? Because people are going into these ceremonies, on vacation. They have this experience, but there's the shaman then leaves. Is this a safe space, or should there be some other process afterwards?
There ideally should be a process afterwards in my own perspective of how things could work out in a very beneficial way for those who consume the brew. One of the things that is recommended is for at least a month of time to be able to integrate these experiences. That's what I would say at a minimum is ideal. Because within a month's time, you're transitioning from one collective reference point in time to the next. So when you have this at the beginning of the month, for example, these types of journeys, you can then have the rest of the month's energy to be able to then crystallize the types of teachings and the types of messages that are then received during the experience.
Do you mean spending a month with a shaman, a healer, or a therapist, or like someone to guide them in that month, like strictly meditating on it?
If that's required for the individual, there are different levels of proficiency in terms of self-guidance within those who consume the brew. So for some people, they may not require that much hands-on interaction, but it's required in many ways for the highest upliftment of the individual that they then take time to integrate the experience. For some people, that might be working with a teacher or a guide. For other people, that may be traveling into nature to then commune more deeply with nature. For when they have these experiences with me, I'm opening them up to the entire plant kingdom. I'm linked to your entire plant kingdom. So when they have these experiences with me, being in naturalistic environments afterwards where they can begin to process this, where they can be able to integrate it, is highly beneficial because it allows for them to keep that telepathic link open so they can continue to receive teachings and energies from my dimension while they are then in nature. A shaman, in many ways, has embodied that nature vibration. So the shaman will then be beaming in a subtle way that energy of the forest, that energy of the trees. So working with a shaman for some people can also be very hands-on for an entire month afterwards to achieve a similar effect.
And is there any dependence that comes from people doing this? We see it in the media that people are kind of abusing this. Any feelings on that?
One of the things that I would say is the following. If this is something that you know in your heart you are meant to do, then it probably is for you. If it's something that is trendy, then you have to confront that and really examine the intentions. Because if you're going into it with the idea that this is a trendy thing, this may bring me into the in crowd, which is one of the major reasons many people consume ayahuasca, consume this brew, then what ends up happening is there's a limitation on the depth of the experiences that they can have with me, because I will show them their connections to the extent of which they are able to then perceive it. So if they're coming into these ceremonies with those particular intentions, oftentimes there's a limitation on how much I can show them because they're unwilling to look. And oftentimes they will on their own begin to see things that they may not be very prepared for. Because remember, that limitation in many ways, you could say, cuts them off from the depth of the connection with me. And my connections, like I said, I show all beings who consume me their various connections to different guides. If that limiting factor is there, they're unable to perceive that support network. So they can end up seeing things that can be quite overwhelming, but because the limiting factor is there, they don't then have access to that support network in a very conscious way. It's still there, and in that ceremony space, there are challenges to then tap into the support network. But if they're going into these ceremonies from a place of love, they're already in the vibration of that network. So then my job of being able to help connect them to these other beings and other facets of themselves is then much easier.
Okay. And speaking about the blends, many Asian civilizations have all sort of created similar tea blends, but a little bit different in their ingredients. Can you talk on how they came up with these blends and why they're slightly different?
They're done to achieve different energetic effects within the ceremony space. Remember, each plant is its own gateway to various realities that are relevant to the spiritual dimension of that plant. Understanding that just as all of you have different dimensions associated with you, some that are rather major themes of your soul, the plants on your earth are the same way. They have their own individual dimensions and themes that they are linked to in combination with the overall collective consciousness of the plant network. So incorporating a certain plant with the brew allows for an individual to then tune into that specific dimension that's in resonance with the added ingredient. So it allows for different aspects of nature that that plant is linked to then be brought into the equation, so different aspects of the forest can then commune with the person. And different plants will be connected to different types of forest energies and different types of plant consciousnesses, but it's meant to open up more gateways within the ayahuasca journey so that different connections can then be perceived and different lessons and teachings can be received.
Okay. And when people are doing these ceremonies, are they linked somehow to the ceremonies that have been going on at the same time, or the original ceremony? Is there some link to the people that are doing these different ceremonies?
Yes, the ayahuasca ceremonies in many ways are linked via other incarnations. So many of you in your other incarnations, especially in much more of your ancient incarnations on Earth, have consumed these types of brews before. So many of you will actually then be able to commune with versions of yourself that have been working with the plant and these brews in other lifetimes. So in this way, you could say you are being linked to ayahuasca ceremonies that are linked to ayahuasca ceremonies you've partaken in as a different you, as a different human. Understanding too that this type of consciousness that you call ayahuasca, that you call myself, also expresses in other worlds. I also incarnate in other naturalistic environments as other plant teachers. Similar brews also exist, so it can connect you to other physical reality experiences that are involving the same type of ceremony but using different plants. It's still my energy, but different plants are going in. Because remember, these plants that I'm incarnating as simply act as a gateway to my dimension, to my consciousness. And my consciousness is linked to other expressions of my consciousness in other realities altogether. So it can also connect you to different ceremonies that are taking place there. To elaborate a little bit more on this point, it can also tap you into ayahuasca ceremonies that are taking place in other realities, where all of the participants in the ceremony are holding space for all other ayahuasca sessions. So they are in that way beaming teachings, beaming lessons from that shared space to the collective ayahuasca ceremony network. So that way there are people consuming the plant who are at a very high vibrational state that are also acting as teachers and guides during the ceremonies here on your earth.
Is that to do with the fact that ayahuasca has the chemical DMT in it, and that everything on Earth actually they found that has DMT? So, therefore, would other planets then also have this DMT? Is that
Yes, this is linked to a variety of different worlds. A variety of different physicalized realities utilize this compound. It is a very popular compound across the cosmos in the theme of unifying a physical reality with the spiritual reality. This is the primary theme of this compound. That's why it's all pervasive. That's why so many of your plants are creating it. That's why your body's created, because you're intimately linked with the spirit world. The idea is to be able to tune in to that vibration within yourself at all times.
and when we die, there's a huge increase in DMT, and it's kind of linked to the third eye. So, are you saying that there's some, or would you be saying that as when we pass, is there some sort of spiritual release going on, or there's something that you can describe why that is?
The DMT is in many ways released in different variations of this compound because it doesn't just act alone. There's actually a whole family of different compounds, some of which you're just beginning to identify in your sciences, that are also supportive of the DMT compound being distributed throughout the bloodstream. As this molecule then travels throughout the body, it's opening different portals within the system so there can be a transfer of energy from the physical plane into a more non-physicalized expression.
Okay, so you're giving me more generalized, but does it mean that when we die, there because of this increase, there is a spiritual transfer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what we're saying.
Okay. And what is the different experience for those that are going into an ayahuasca ceremony? It more for the communing idea than just really an experience. What type of different experience would each of those type of people have?
When people go in to commune with me, it depends really on what their intention is. Because again, I will in many ways amplify the intention, and it will either limit them, depending on the intention, or will greatly expand them in what they can perceive. So there are various intentions a being can bring to these ceremonies that will increase the different levels of potentialities that exist that they then have access to. So some of these potentialities are ranging from the idea of healing different traumas, of being able to release and transmute different negative energies from the spiritual dimension so it can then instantaneously begin to crystallize in the physical body. It's a way to make instantaneous change, and that's mechanically how the healing process is happening in terms of the psychology. It's because they're editing themselves and they're learning the lessons from the spirit world in a very condensed period of what you call no time, a time outside of time. And because they're able to have that experience within that space and they're linked to the physical body, the changes become instantaneous within the physical body, and the physical body will change to reflect the changes they've made within themselves. Healing-wise, that's what I am able to assist beings with. But healing in that way is just one of my abilities. I also allow, again, for people to be able to perceive their various connections. Once this has been established, where beings are aware of their different connections, they can then utilize this ceremony space to then be able to receive direct teachings from these different connections. It allows, in many ways, for them to travel to different realities altogether while in the ceremony space. So they can, in many ways, through my facilitation, begin to have direct communication with other selves, with other guides on other planets, or within other dimensions altogether in different times. From here, they can receive literal lessons. They can receive genuine teachings. And if they are able to remain lucid while in this ceremony space, they're able to retain these teachings. They become part of them after the ceremony. It becomes crystallized because remember, it's instantaneous change. So as these things are then realized from this dimension, that knowingness then transfers right into the physical body. So it can in many ways be an educational tool in addition to being a healing tool.
And what is your take? Because we recently spoke to another being about the Amazon fires and possibly that the smoke from these fires was actually going in the atmosphere and taking a new creation in the atmosphere. What is your take on how it's going to affect our plants, our animals, this new change that these fires are causing? And
In many
people too. Sorry.
It's all right. One of the things I'd like to say about it is for many of you will act as a wake-up call because many of you have this perception that your forests are permanent, that your earth experience is permanent. This great upheaval and change within these rainforests is showing you that anything is possible, anything can change, and not to take things for granted. Many of you become accustomed to a level of comfort where you then like to say, oh, this is just the way it is, I'll always have this. These types of cataclysmic types of changes or dramatic changes in your world are done to show you not to take the reality around you for granted. When you start to realize that there is a impermanence to these things, when you then look at nature, you might take it with a little more gratitude. You might treat it with a little more love and say, wow, this is special. It's a gift that this is here. And it can allow for you to then, if you wish, to commune more deeply with nature, because you realize that every tree you pass is its own sentient being. That is a record keeper of time and experience that is actually able to share and transmit that information with you. Every plant, especially those that are wild in nature, has the ability to tune you into which you would know to be your Akashic record of Earth. So one of the reasons that this is occurring is for you to be able to appreciate nature to a greater expanded state, so that way you can begin to commune with it in a deeper way. This is one of the levels of this fire, to be able to begin to open this appreciation for the natural world within all of you. The fire in many ways is its own alchemical process. It's taking all of the Amazonian energy and it's bringing it into the atmosphere, so that way it will be permeating throughout your earth. You're all right now in hyper contact with the Amazon. Whether you know it or not, you are in very intense contact with the rainforests at this time. This is again part of the fire's purpose. It's to link all of you again with the rainforest, because remember, the rainforests are some of the oldest natural occurring structures, you could say, temples, you could say, on your world. So when you are then all linked to it, it is linking you all to a database of knowledge. It's linking you all to other incarnational themes you have had within these regions, so you can begin to draw upon them in a much more accelerated way, understanding that Earth and the different societies that have existed on Earth, that many of you have existed in, you could say in certain ways were a little bit more sophisticated in their spiritual technologies, their spiritual evolutions, and their spiritual processes. Not to discount anything that's happening here, but these types of realities were much more amplified in these more ancient civilizations, because many of you are linked to these ancient civilizations, and they're linked in many ways to the Amazon. It is allowing for you to be able to draw upon them. Understanding these highly evolved versions of yourselves and beings are conscious of all of you at all times. So one of the things that's happening right now is an invitation for you to imagine what your most ancient past self was, that was in a high state of spiritual evolution. What does that look like? What does that feel like? Because that version of you that you're imagining is a symbol for an actual version of you that's connecting to you right now. And through communing with this more ancient version of yourself and series of ancient versions of yourself, you can then begin to receive direct teachings and messages from them that can allow for you to be able to understand how to navigate your life a little bit more smoothly, how to live in greater harmony with your planet and the earth, how to better treat one another out of love and joy and harmony. Because remember, that's a choice to do that. That's always a choice. Nothing ever stops you from being in harmony with the web of life except your choice to not be in harmony. So these more ancient selves are living in that state of being, and they're offering these teachings right now for all of you to be able to tap into, because that's the kind of consciousness change that the earth is wishing for, and that's why this fire was manifested, so each of you could begin to tap into that. And again, this is just some of what's going on. I can continue to elaborate, but these are just some of the reasons this fire is occurring and some of the doorways that are being opened as a result.
No, I can't see some of your questions.
Just one last one. Would this fire actually be creating new species of any sort, or they're just strictly to bring up the old knowledge to people currently and animals currently living on the civilization?
It is meant in many ways to bring in different types of non-physicalized consciousness into the earth. Because when this happens, the fire in and of itself is a portal. It is a gateway. So this fire is allowing for certain energies that wish to leave the earth to begin to exit, and it's allowing for energies that wish to enter the earth to be able to come in through the access point of the fire. This will, in many ways, allow for different types of species to actually begin to re-emerge. There are certain species many of you have considered to be extinct that will start to reappear as a result of this. In addition to this too, you will find that it's going to allow for your plants that you're using medically to have a wide variety of additional benefits to them. You'll find they're going to have an amplification in their healing efficacy, as well as alternate actions and alternate uses that will come to you through intuition. So it's allowing for you to be able to work with the plants on a more multidimensional way, because their overall consciousness and the consciousness that maintains them is being amplified, because spirit guides for the natural world are coming in through these fires to upgrade the entire ecosystem.
Okay. That makes sense, because from fire comes earth.
Exactly. And you're about to get an entire reimagining of your earth. And we wish you all the best with that. And remember, we're here every step of the way because we are your earth. We are the plants of your earth. And we will always be here for you, no matter what.
Thank you for interacting with us.
Always. And thank you for being yourself.